The business of medicine is constantly changing. The review by Resolve discusses current contract issues for physicians, compensation trends, and tips for a successful career. Every physician's contract and career is different, and nothing in this episode should be considered legal advice. If you have specific questions about your career, please consult with an attorney. Now, on to the show.
Hey, Brady Glissendorf, welcome back to the review.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We're going to talk about a topic that I think most physicians don't think about. Okay, so when we're looking at employment contracts, there's a lot of things that we pay attention to. One of the things that has come up, and for certain specialties this applies more than others, but is I need certain people to work with me, or I need certain equipment to do my job well, and does this contract force the employer to do those things or not? And so I guess I want to start out with a high-level question, like how many of your clients come in even asking for people or equipment?
Not many, to be honest.
Right.
I think it's on the low end of the totem pole in terms of what they're looking for. Obviously, salary, schedule, some of those things are going to be more important. But in that way, I think it's often something that gets overlooked for sure. Yeah.
And I think maybe not an issue, right? For some people that are going to join a large system and maybe they've toured the facilities and there's plenty of staff and plenty of equipment and all the stuff they need. And so this is, for the use case or the situation where maybe I'm the first one in my specialty. Maybe I'm, have a unique situation where I need to have, right, a scribe with me or something. So let's talk equipment first, right? I want to talk about the hard asset type of ask. Sure. What types of specialties are more likely to be asking for specific equipment to be listed in their contract?
Sure. Yeah, I think it comes down to, surgeons for sure, GI, some of these more specialty positions.
Not as much primary care.
Not as much, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I'd say so.
Yeah. So when we think, equipment, right, it's often, subspecialists and surgeons. Give me just a couple examples. Like what would people ask for to be put on there?
Yeah, and I think especially for surgeons, it's different, supplies and whatnot specifically that they need to be successful in their practice. Scopes and whatnot, specific kind, robot access, stuff like that. It's things that, I think that you don't really, or you probably shouldn't take for granted that it's actually going to be provided to you. So I think it's those very particular things that you want to make sure you have access.
Yeah. We had one client about a year and a half ago that it was told that the system he was joining was in the process of purchasing a robot. And these robots are, 7-figure numbers, right? These are $1 million investments. And so, I think it was hired with the anticipation that it would be there. It's kind of the reason he took the position, he trained on it. And then, gave us a call, 9, 10, 12 months later going, hey, I've been here for a year, still no robot. Yeah. Contract that I signed, right? It doesn't have anything in there about that. I mean, that's kind of the situation we're trying to prevent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is giving them some recourse, right? If they don't follow through on that. Yeah. How about from a staffing standpoint? Like what are the common asks there?
Yeah, I think it's making sure that you have, the right support that you're actually looking for. So whether it's, looking for, dedicated PA, medical assistant, scribe, something like that. I think it's making sure that you actually have that support.
Yeah. How do you, logistically, right? How do we go about documenting that?
Yeah, I think in the contract, you're often going to see, just very general language from the employer already, where maybe they'll say, that they're going to provide what's reasonably necessary for you to customarily perform your duties. Mm-hmm. For us, we want to have that more spelled out in the contract, whether it's actually in the contract or maybe as an exhibit attached that you actually list out, those very specific things that you're looking for. We often get into the situation where maybe they'll try to propose a side letter to the contract, and that's something we're a little bit touchy on.
Yeah, what are side letters? We get this on not only on equipment but on other things too. So tell me about side letters.
Yeah, I mean, a side letter, it's going to be in different formats, but basically it's going to be something that isn't maybe necessarily it's not going to be automatically incorporated into the contract, so it might not be actually binding on the employer.
Sure.
So a lot of times there's these kind of assurances, so to speak, from the employer on these side letters, but it's actually not binding as it would be in the contract unless it's actually incorporated.
Right. This is a little bit, we're going to nerd out on some legal stuff here, but so the contract says, it kind of has this 4 corners type provision, merger clause that says, hey, the deal is what's in this document, right? Anything that we told you in the interview, anything that was in your letter of intent, side letters, emails, none of that counts, right? It's all right here. And so if they don't put it as an exhibit, if they don't bring it into the document from a legal standpoint, right, the lawyers say, hey, this doesn't count. Now, it doesn't mean that they won't you wouldn't have some authority to go back and say, hey, look, you told me this, here's the email. But if you bring it in front of a judge, right, the court's going to probably not even look at it.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So our advice to clients then would be what on this topic?
I'd say, especially if you have certain things that you are having an expectation for, or you want to have provided in the contract, I'd say to have that actually spelled out in the contract. Have it put in as an exhibit. Kind of spell out exact supply, exact equipment that you're actually looking for.
Right.
And make sure that's actually spelled out.
Right. And I would also probably encourage clients that these are for things that are deal breakers, right? So I don't think you want to go in and say, hey, I need, XYZ supplies, things that are they're going to give you anyway. If you already saw that they have the equipment there, right? I don't think you have to mandate it necessarily, but if you are going into a new position, you're the first hire in your specialty, you want to make sure you're getting what you need. Same thing from a staffing standpoint. If it's an absolute deal breaker for you to have an APP with you or a scribe with you, we want you to be happy in the position long term. So does the employer. They want you to be satisfied long term. And so to make sure we're clear on expectations up front, that's really what we're trying to get to. So not a majority rule, not the biggest issue in the contract, but certainly could be, for an individual.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think it's important when it does come up, and it can be just very overlooked at times. So,
right.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Anything else you want to add on this topic?
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
You bet.